Okay, what we have in front of us here is we basically have a standard XRK trackball controller from X Gaming. Basically, to take the controller apart, what you're going to notice is you're going to notice that there's four holes in the top. These four holes in the top, as you can see through them. As you can see through them. When you mount this in your control panel, basically the way this works is your control panel is on top. You have a bolt that goes down through the control panel, goes into the trackball, and then it comes out the other side of the trackball like this. And then basically you can have a nut goes on the other end of this, and that basically, your control panel's here, you have a bolt here, bolt head here, then you have a nut here, and basically then you have four of those throughout the trackball. There's four of those. That basically is what is used to hold the trackball inside your control panel, okay? Now the way you take this apart is, basically what you want to do in these is you want to flip this over to the back. On the back, you're going to have four screws that are going to come out. There are four screws that are going to be located in there. I'm going to show you how to take these out. Okay? Okay, we're going to start with this one here. Now, the thing to keep in mind is when you're taking this apart, it's very important on these, when you take these apart, that you take these apart very, very carefully, because you don't want to lose any of these screws that are in here. Once you take the screw out, then you just hold your hand open and you cup them, and then you have one screw there. Then you flip the trackball like this, and then you can take the next screw out. Okay. Okay, just like that. Now the thing to keep in mind is you want to make sure while you're doing this that you hold your hand together. These are actually two pieces. There's two pieces here to hold this together. You want to make sure you hold this together the whole time also, so that it doesn't come apart. Okay. There's a second one. Okay, there is a fourth one there. Okay. Okay. Now, one of the things you want to keep in mind is once you have these four screws in, once you have these four screws taken out, this is what they look. These are what the screws look like. Basically, like that. They're little Phillips head screwdrivers. So what I use is I use a Phillips head screwdriver like this to basically take these out. Each one, and then now the thing to keep in mind is you don't want to lose it. So you want to make sure that you put these in a safe place where you're not going to lose them. Okay. Now what you're going to do now is, once you have the screws out, you want to keep holding this together. Once you have the screws out, what you're going to want to do is you want to take the XRK trackball, you want to flip it over like that so the wire is facing you this way, lay it down on the table. What you're going to do is you're actually going to take the unit apart. Now, the cover should just, once you have it in place, you just lift the cover straight off like that. That's the actual cover that comes off. You're going to see that. You're going to see the holes are there. This is the cover. Just put that off to the side. Okay. Now, inside the trackball, you're going to see this is the actual ball that controls the trackball. You just want to lift the trackball out. Okay, just like so. And this is the actual trackball that controls it. Now, different trackballs, the balls may be different sizes depending on the trackball. I think this one I'm currently using is a 2.5 inch or a 3.5 inch trackball. Some of the trackballs are going to be smaller, but basically the mechanics of the trackball more or less work the same as what I'm going to show you. So you want to put this off to the side. Okay, and what you have inside your trackball unit, you have a series of rollers. You have basically three rollers. You have one roller here. This is just a roller they roll relatively freely. Okay, they're supposed to be free of movement. When you roll these, they're supposed to move very smoothly. Not supposed to be any stickiness at all. Okay. Now what you're going to see is you have one roller here. Then you're going to have two other rollers. Now the rollers that are on these other two rollers that are either to the top and to the bottom here, you're going to notice on these rollers that there's little wheels that turn on these rollers. These are little optical pickups. These are optical pickups. When you turn that ball that goes inside here, it runs along these rollers here and basically turns these wheels. There's one for this direction, one for the left, right, or right, left, one for the left, right, or up, down, depending which way the trackball unit is facing you and what the functions will do. There's one here. Then you notice that there's one on the other side. So there's a total of two. There's one here, and then there's one here. There's two of these inside, each side here. Each one of these basically has the optical wheel. There's a little sensor that it goes inside, which is right here. This basically counts the number of turns that the trackball does, and it turns it into computer language that the computer understands and sends it into the computer, just like your mouse does. The only difference is you're using the trackball movement, the rolling trackball movement, to do the same thing your mouse would do by turning these little wheels, okay? Now, the one thing you're going to notice is when you get these units is sometimes, occasionally, if you have a unit that's sticking where the trackball isn't rolling properly, what you want to do when I do these, I service my trackballs about once every two to 3 years, depending how often it needs it. It depends on how often the trackball is used and also the environment that it's in. Now, to take these rollers out, what you want to do on these, you just want to take your finger here, and you just want, at least, now this is on the X Arcade. It may vary depending on the trackball that you have, but on the X Arcade ones, what you do is you just put your fingers here and you lift these out. When you lift these out, you're going to have the roller here, and then on the ends you're going to have a bearing here, and you're going to have a bearing here. Now, what you want to do is you want to basically, when I take these apart, what I do is I take these apart, take the bearings off. There's one bearing there, and then you'll see there's one bearing there. And then what I like to do is I like to go ahead and I like to clean this. You can get various cleaners and things on the internet for cleaning electrical components. What you want to do is you want to clean these. You want to make sure that this is nice and clean, because this is when I service these. This is one thing I do. I clean this whole unit first, and then on these bearings, right here, this is a roller. On the bearings right here on the inside, you'll see these little bearings that are in here. What I like to do on the bearings is I like to use some bearings do not need lubrication, some of them do. Sometimes you can also clean these. What you want to do when you do an X Arcade thing is you want to read basically what I usually do is on these, I haven't had to clean these bearings or anything in a while because I haven't had any problems with them. But basically you want to make sure that when these are in place that these are clean, that you don't have any dirt or anything inside these tracks, that these are clean. Okay, that's the first thing you check. On the actual roller itself, if you notice on the roller, the end of it is smaller. That basically is where the bearing goes. The bearing slides on, one end slides on here, and then one end slides on here. And then once you have this cleaned and you hold this in your hand and it spins freely, like that, then you can put it back in the unit. And it just sits inside here. There's a little channel right in here. I can show you here. There's a little channel right on the side here. There's little grooves in here. And basically the roller just fits right inside there, just like that. Okay? Now, when you have this in place, then, you should, if you notice when I spin this, it spins very freely. You shouldn't have any binding movements in here at all. Now, this is just the roller. This is called, they call this the free roller. There aren't any sensors or anything attached to this. That's what these over here are for. Now, these basically come out the same way. You take your finger, you lift these off. Now, the difference here is, when you lift this out, you want to be very careful. If you notice this wheel right here, there's a little sensor in here, right in here. You want to be very careful when you lift these out that you take them out squarely. You lift it, hold it straight down, and lift that to square up. Just like that. You have to be very careful with these wheels, because what you do not want to do on these wheels is you don't want to damage anything involving this wheel right here. This optical pickup wheel right here, this little plastic wheel, if anything gets damaged on here, it's going to cause your trackball not to work. Now, what I like to do when I service these is, basically I do the same thing I do with the other ones. I take the bearings off and I clean them. Okay, make sure there isn't any dirt. Make sure it's moving freely. But then what I also like to do is on the ends of these wheels, there's little screws on here. That's basically what holds this little plastic dowel in place. I like to go ahead and just make sure it's tight. Just tighten it down just to be sure it's tight. Now, most of the time on these, they're going to have, at least on the X Arcades, they have little locking nuts that are on the ends of these things. There's little lock nuts on the ends of these things, and that basically keeps that nut from coming loose. But it's something when you service is that you still want to check while you have it apart. Now, basically, once you have it in place, the only difference with putting this back in is you have your bearings in here, and then basically in the trackball, you're going to notice that there's a groove in here. When you put this back in, you want to line the groove up in the wheel like this, and then just set that in just like that, very, very gently. You want to make sure that you don't do any damage to these sensors that are in here either. As you can see, there's one here, and there's one over there. You want to be very careful when you're working with this so that you don't do anything to damage the circuit board. Now, what I suggest you do is, when you take these apart, I usually use an anti-static spray or something like that, just to make sure I don't have any static on me as far as when it goes to servicing these trackballs. And basically, I do the same thing with the other roller. I just take the other roller out just like I did with the first one, go ahead and clean it, and when you're done, all these rollers should be moving smoothly, just like this. Okay, they should all be moving, and I'm going to check the screw on this one as well, make sure that that's good. Okay, and that's tight. That's good. That's nice and tight. Put that back together. Okay, now once everything is moving freely, okay, this is the first part. Once you have all the rollers moving smoothly, then basically you're done with this part here. This part's basically done. Just set this off to the side, okay? Now what you want to do when you have your trackball is, inside the trackball, this is the roller I was telling you about. What I like to do on these is, to make sure that they move smoothly, I like to basically use just a little bit of glass cleaner. You can use any number of things on it, but the main thing is you don't use anything in it that's going to harm plastic. I use a very small amount of glass cleaner, and I also have the glass cleaner diluted too. I do dilute it with a little bit of water. You just put a little bit, of cleaner on it. It doesn't take a whole lot, like that. And then you just use a standard rag, like if you have a t-shirt rag, anything like that. And basically what you do then is you just put this in your hand, like I'm showing you here, and then you just basically wipe it down like this. Okay. Now the thing to keep in mind is when you wipe this down, you're going to make sure that this is completely dry before you put it back in the unit. Okay. Now what you want to do with the trackball now is you want to make sure that this goes back in place, set it in just like that. Now if you'll notice that when I turn the trackball, you'll notice that the corresponding sensor moves along with it. That's one of the things that how this works. When you move the trackball, one of these little optical wheels here moves. There's one here, and then there's also one over here on this side. And basically that's what determines the position that the trackball goes in. Depending on where the ball is at and how much each of these sensors is moving, that's what determines the position on the screen to control your games. Okay? Now when you're putting this back together, what you want to do is you want to let the unit sit here. Now you're going to notice on one thing I'm going to point out on my trackball unit. If you notice in the trackball, I only have one wire coming out of here. Basically, this is just used, this is what attaches to the computer. On the computer, if you're going to notice on this one, now this is on the X Arcade. Basically, there's a connector here. If you want to use a full mouse functions, when you buy this trackball, there's also additional wires. Okay, one second. There's also additional wires that are going to come. There's also additional wires on here. When you buy this, there's additional wires that are going to come out. When this comes out, you're going to have additional wires that are going to come out, and you're going to have little fire buttons and things attached to those. That's used, if you want to use it, you can use this as a full mouse. This is what controls the movement. Then those buttons that come out the end that have the wires attached, that determines the mouse control buttons. Like when you press your left and right mouse buttons, those are what those trigger buttons are for. They're normally attached, they come out of here of the mouse as well. I've taken them off because I don't need to use them because I use the mouse on my computer. But if you want to use this as a full mouse like for a project, then the wires that come out that have the buttons attached to them, those you attach to a control panel, and those work the same as they would if they were on your mouse. There's the left and right buttons on the mouse. Those basically do the same functions. Just to show that I don't have it attached, but when you buy an X Arcade, it will have those wires attached. Okay? And then on the connector that's on there, it goes to the computer. You're going to this end right here. If you want to, you can do it a number of ways to attach it. You can either attach this to your mouse input on your computer through this connector here. Looks just like that. Or you also have the option on these of using the USB connector, which is right here. You have the option of using one or the other depending how you want to hook it up to your computer. Okay? Now, when you're putting the trackball back together again, what you want to keep in mind is the wire that's basically sticking out here I showed you. There's a wire that sticks out here. You want to make sure when you put the control panel back, when you put the cover back on, there's a little notch right in here, inside here. There's a little notch right here. This little notch right here that's right here has to line up with this. So you want to make sure that when you put this back in that these basically go in like this. That notch there lines up with the wire and goes together like that. Okay? That basically is how it goes together. Now, when you're putting this back together, very important, you want to make sure that you hold this together again, just like I'm doing here. Go ahead and attach a screw in here. Okay, you want to attach a screw there. Okay. Now, when you're putting this together, you want to make sure when you tighten this down, do not over-tighten these screws. It's very easy on these to over-tighten these. Just tighten up just snug and then let it go. Don't over-tighten that, okay? Then you put one down here. Okay. And there's two more to attach. Okay, hold 1 second. Okay, we got one more to attach. There's one in here. And then there's one more that goes right in here. I'll put that one in next. Okay, basically that puts it, so now the trackball's back together, okay? You know, so it's functioning really smoothly now, and you'll see that's basically how you service a trackball when you want to take it apart, and also what's inside the trackball unit. Now, depending on the manufacturer, the trackball may vary depending on what I'm showing you. This is just the X-Arcade trackball. This is what he is in all my arcade machines. I find the controls in this is very precise and works very, very well. Now, when the thing you're going to find out is when you get the trackball, you're going to, in the manual that comes with the trackball, I'm going to show you here, you're going to get a manual that looks just like this. It says X-Arcade trackball on it. Now, inside this manual, this is basically going to show you everything that's involved and how to set up a trackball. It's very important that when you're setting up for the first time, there's very, very detailed instructions in here that tell you how to set everything up. Okay? Now, also I wanted to point out is that if you have any questions about installing the trackball, I have found that the people at the forums have been very helpful, and also the people at the X Gaming site as well have been very, very helpful in helping me. But in the X Arcade site have been very helpful in answering any questions that I have regarding this. Now, I can tell you that when I mounted my trackball, the one thing I wanted to point in mind is when you tighten these screws up, you want to make sure that these aren't too tight. That's the thing. When you tighten the bolts that go through here, you want to make sure it's tight but not too tight because you don't want that to affect the operation of your trackball. You're going to notice in the trackball as well. You're going to notice that the trackball that there's a little lip here. Now, what I do on my arcade machines is when I put the trackball, I put washers in between here to get the height of the control panel just right so it's nice and flush with this lip right here. As you can see, there's a lip right here. And basically, if you do it right, you can get that nice and flush, and then that basically is how you mount a trackball. Now, you're going to also find, too, that depending on the size cabinet that you have, some trackballs will work better than others. It all depends on the size cabinet and how much room you have to work with. Now, the one thing about the X-Arcade trackballs the one thing I really do like about them is I like the fact that they're fairly simple in how they install. I've installed quite a few, and I haven't had any problems with them so far. I have one trackball that's been in my arcade almost 10 years, and it's still going strong, I'm happy to say. I've only had to clean it once, and it's been working beautifully. So this basically just gives you an idea about how the X-Arcade trackball works, and I hope you got a chance to learn a little bit about what's involved in a trackball. This is the X-Arcade. There's many other brands out there. There's HAP. There's a bunch of other trackballs out there for different needs. And the thing else to keep in mind is that if you want to have a trackball that plugs into your computer like this, you want to make sure when you get the trackball that it says on it that it will attach to the computer through a cable.